We will start in a few minutes, just waiting for people to join on as we transition from the last webinar. All right, let's get this one started. So welcome to challenge number 3, understanding impacts of space weather. If you're joining us for the first time this morning, welcome. We have had a great conversation already in the first hour in the previous challenge. So we're looking to continue again with another great topic and bringing to you new stakeholders, challenge stakeholders that will be leading today's discussion. Again, I would like to welcome everyone who has registered for the webinars. We look forward to hopefully having all companies that are interested in participating submit a proposal for the challenge and participating in the Allied Defense Accelerator program. Really quickly, before I pass this over to Captain Singleton to kick us off, I just want to make sure that everyone's comfortable with the Zoom tool. I know most of us have been stuck at home for the past few months, so Zoom is our new way of life. But just as a quick reminder, depending on how you would like to see our panelists today, up on the top right, you have a speaker view or a gallery view. Gallery view will show you everyone that has their video up. Speaker view will just focus on the person that is speaking. And then today as well, for the Q&A portion at the end of the session, there's a Q&A button down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. That is where we are asking all participants to ask their questions. Again, you can ask your question at any time during the webinar, but they will be answered at the end when we go through the Q&A aspect. Other than that, chat functions, if you truly directly want to send a message to a panelist, I think you can, but it would be more conducive to ask the question in the Q&A function, and we will moderate that towards the end. So with that, I will pass the baton to Captain Singleton, and we will start.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Some of you may have been on the webinar in the last hour or have even joined yesterday. There'll be more webinars next week. All of these have been prepared for the purpose of bringing you closer to the problems, introducing you to the people that are closest to them, so that you can understand how your solutions that you're developing are relevant to these mission challenges that we have. We're going to be hearing a little bit more today about challenge 3 in this webinar, and I'm not going to introduce everybody because we have a chair that's going to do that, and we'll hear from everybody in a minute. But I want to remind everybody that we've got a website at International Space Pitch Day. You can get additional program information there. And here to ask questions, if you are interested and find relevance to these challenges, to solutions that you're developing, look at submitting a proposal to the DASA competition. The opportunity there is that we'll be able to invite suppliers to pitch at our International Space Pitch Day in November. Companies there will have the opportunity to walk away with same-day contracts on behalf of the US DoD and the UK Ministry of Defense for further development of those solutions to work with our end users, stakeholders there. So with that, excited, we're going to turn it over to Tony DeCarbo, who's going to be chairing this panel today.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Hope everyone's having a great day, staying safe and healthy. Start with a real brief introduction myself, and then we'll go around to the stakeholders after that. We will talk about the challenge. I'll bring up a couple of points, then I will poll the stakeholders for their opinions on some of the points, and then I believe we will go into a question and answer. And as Jake had said earlier, if you want to ask a question, if you go to the bottom of your screen, you scroll down there, there's a question and answer box. You can add a question and we will make sure we get to those. With that being said, my name is Tony DiCarbo. I am the technical advisor to the Combined Force Space Component Command, CIFSIC. The command is commanded by Major General John Shaw. CIFSIC is one of two components of United States Space Command, the other being the Joint Task Force Space Defense. The operations center that CIFSIC conducts operations through is the Combined Space Operations Center, or CSPOC. You may have heard of that. So that's my position, and I'm really excited to be here. I really am happy that the Zoom is really helping us out in this COVID environment. So with that, I will turn over to some introductions. So let's go with Flight Lieutenant Mark Platt.
Well, good afternoon and good morning. Flight Lieutenant Mark Platt. I'm a staff officer in Air Command. It's the Royal Air Force Air Headquarters, and I work in capability development, in particular space capability development, and work with in development of a 5 to 10 year horizon, looking to the sort of capabilities that the Air Force needs in order to perform its function, and then converting those capabilities into concepts and delivering those to frontline users. So we support our frontline operators at the UK Space Operations Centre and our sensor up at RAF Flyndales on the ballistic missile early warning system.
Thank you, Mark. Lieutenant Colonel David Pyatt from NSDC.
Morning, everybody, and good afternoon. I'm listed on here as Lieutenant Colonel Dave Pyatt. That is me, but I'm also Mr. Dave Pyatt. I work with Dragon Ops in my current capacity. That's where I'm in my contractor role today. Background is I'm a lieutenant colonel with the Army. I'm an FA-40. I've been in Army space for about 13 years. My basic branch is armor and aviation, but on the contractor side, I lead part of the what we call the Blue Cell team, working with Miss Barb Golf and Carrie Turner and Dr. Emily Bonner with AFRL, doing commercial space operations. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, David. Let's go with RAGS, Mr. Richard Bowler, please. U.S. Space Force.
Good morning, all. My name is Richard Bowler, and I'm the Senior Technical Advisor for Science and Technology to the Director of Requirements here at U.S. Space Force. I'm not an expert in the area of space weather, but I have a couple of hired guns I brought along with me today. And if Starburst could activate, please. I hate to do this to you. I know this is difficult. Activate Mr. Callahan, and if we've got Lieutenant Colonel Irwin on, they're going to give you much better answers on this than I am able to.
Yes,
my background is that I hold 17 science and technology portfolios for the Space Force, so I'm broad rather than narrow and specific in one specific area. So these guys will be able to give you the information you're looking for, and we're very pleased to be here and to take part in this activity. Thank you.
Thanks, Rags. Let's go now to Lieutenant Colonel James Cheeseman, please. British Army.
We might be having.
No, I'm here, although
Oh.
I believe you can't see me. Let me switch my video on now. No, I can't. It won't allow me to. Host a stop tip, so you just get my voice at the moment. Lieutenant Colonel Jim Cheeseman. I am the. Been asked to start my video. Here we go. Oh, There we go. And I even get a background as well this time. Lieutenant Colonel Jim Cheeseman. I'm in the British Army and I'm the lead desk officer for space capability. As those of you on the previous webinar are fully aware, I am a generalist, and I fortunately have numerous subject matter experts working for me within ISR, PNT, and SATCOM. And it's my job to actually cohere all of those views to allow really to have the best space capability to allow land maneuver. Obviously, being a soldier, I'm very interested in the weather, been at all types of weather, and in particular space weather. I'm looking very much forward to this webinar.
Thank you, Colonel. We'll finally go to Colonel Miller Belmont, U.S. Army, please. Over.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon. So I'm Colonel Miller Belmont, U.S. Army Reserve. In my reserve capacity, I lead a team of space experts, FA-40s and aerospace engineers in the 75th Innovation Command. Our job is to close the gap on technology and move it to the Army faster. And then for my civilian capacity, I work as the Director of Experimentation for the Army Space and Missile Defense Center of Excellence. My job is to take our prototypes at TRL-4 and get them across the Valley of Death, the field trials, and transition them to programs of record for those that deserve to live. And that's about it.
Thanks, Miller. Let me see. Dave, would you activate your camera? I think the panel members need to be on camera during the discussion. Thank you. Okay, so thank you for the introductions, everyone. As everyone has stated, this is an exciting time. And there's a lot going to happen in the next few years. So without any further ado, let's get going. Today's topic is about space weather. Probably one of the most misunderstood, honestly, in my opinion, of all of the issues in the space domain. So what is space weather? Well, space weather has to do obviously with the activities from the sun. And what does that do? Is there a coronal mass ejection? Will that impact? What will it impact and how will it impact? So we all know that if it's a very severe event, it can impact our infrastructure, our cellular communications, GPS navigation. That's getting into the real crux of the matter. In fact, yesterday, I sat in the operations working group for the CSPO. The CSPO is the Combined Space Operations. It's an effort. It's different than the CSPOC. I don't want to confuse the two, but it's a Five Eye partnership between Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the UK, France, Germany. It's actually a Seven Eye. France, Germany, and of course the United States. And in that, the reason I bring that up is we were talking about priority information requirements, PIRs, yesterday. And one of them was severe or red space weather event. So if space weather is that important that the 7 nations really feel that we need to have a tool to actually help us understand and predict if possible and figure out how to get around and plan for severe space weather, it's pretty important. So with that being said, I'm going to read the specific challenge and a narrative. So if you'll bear with me. Challenge 3, tools that convey the potential and present impact of space weather on users across all domains. The narrative with that is, I am an officer working in a joint headquarters, helping to plan the next phase of a military operation involving maritime, land, and air forces. I want to be able to understand what impacts space weather by effect type, for example, types of charging, atmospheric scintillation, increased drag has or may have on my operations. I am responsible for understanding the current state of health of different assets under my command or that influence the effective operations of the architecture. These assets are often owned or managed by a variety of groups and stakeholders. For example, the UK Ministry of Defense, the United States Department of Defense, commercial industry, ESA, NASA, etc. And I do not tend to have an at-a-glance understanding. I think that's the key, an at-a-glance understanding of what all the current availabilities are, or if they have projected maintenance downtimes that can negatively affect missions during a critical time if not mitigated. And that's the effect of space weather on those assets. A tool or service that helps me manage this by providing a synopsis of current and expected outages during a shift would help me plan and respond as needed. Before I go to the panel, I want to just kind of dissect that challenge just a little bit. So tools that convey the potential and present impact of space weather. Tools. What do tools mean? So I believe we're talking about analysis tools, predictive analysis tools, planning tools, and tools that can actually help us communicate with all the domains. And all the domains in this example are air, land, and sea, as we mentioned. So that's really what this challenge, I believe, is all about. So I've just discussed the challenge and the narrative behind it. So what I want to do now is go around to the panel and have them talk a couple of minutes on what they see this challenge meaning. So number one, what do you think this challenge means, and what you think we really need as not a solution, but as a need for this type of a tool. So with that, we'll start off with Colonel Miller Belmont.
So so I've lived through two solar maxes so far, and that's really how the Army responds to space weather, is to ramp up as it hits, then it's flash in the pan, and then when it passes, everybody forgets about it for another 11 years until the next solar max rolls around, and then we ramp up again, and nobody really has a plan for how to deal with it when it hits, because we have to reinvent the wheel every 11 years as solar max rolls around, because we are less affected by the day-to-day space weather problems, but solar max has real impacts. And what happens in the Army is the operators of the radio equipment aren't aware that they're in solar max, and they figure that they have equipment problems, and the first thing they do is they start tearing apart their equipment and try and figure out what's broken in the equipment. I know this from talking to other FA-40s in the field, and the way they describe it is, the quote to me was, "Miller, you know the dog on the Victorola phonograph picture that's staring into the screen, or staring into the cone? Yeah, that's what operators look like when I'm talking to them about space weather." So the first problem is a common understanding of the problem has to be disseminated. But fundamentally, it comes down to you have to know, and the UHF problems that come from the scintillation are significant, and they're showstoppers. Even though it's just for a few hours a day, dusk, what have you, they tend to magnify the problems because of the inability to recognize that it's space weather and not equipment problems. So you have to know where it's hitting. You have to know when it's hitting. You have to know the specific equipment that's being affected by it. And you have to know for how long. That's really all we need to move around it. The problem is all the data are out there. It's just not getting translated into Army language and distributed across the spectrum to the Army users. So it's a simple fix, really. And the Army could probably fix it for less than $1 million, probably less than 500K. We just haven't done it. Did that answer your question?
Tony, you're
Tony,
muted. You're muted, Tony.
Sorry, thank you. I hit the button. So as experienced as we are at Zoom, I guess I need a little bit more. So let's go to Lieutenant Colonel James Cheeseman from the British Army, please.
Thank you, Tony. For me, and there was a lot of overlap for those of you that were actually on the previous webinar to this one. As a simple soldier, and Colonel has talked about sort of Army language, I want to know the actual effect. Okay, I accept there's space weather. Being a soldier, I just want to know the effect it's going to have on operations. I would also want to, I want in clear English. Certainly we discussed previously about a data overload. I just want to know what's going to happen. we talk about one tool. Certainly, I wouldn't want a separate tool for weather as I would for perhaps the previous challenge, which is visualization. I just want one tool. Tell me about the satellites, tell me about the weather. And then finally, actually, if it is sophisticated enough to tell me when the weather will have an adverse effect, I can actually use that to maneuver around as we would do in any other type of weather. So really, yeah, they're just one tool. I want to know the effect, and actually sort of if it can give me within reason timings, then I can actually try to conduct a land maneuver around those timings to our advantage. That's all for me.
Thank you, Colonel. Next, let's go to RAGS, U.S. Space Force.
Okay, there we are. Thanks very much. I mean, if you talk to most people in the civilian community and you talk to them about space, they would say, there's nothing there. But we all know that there is. And we all know it has a critical impact on everything we do for military space operations. And I'm going to yield my time to my counterpart here, Mr. Kelly Hand, because I see him bouncing up and down in his chair there because he wants to make some points about what we're talking about here. So Kelly, I'm going to yield my time over to you. Over.
All right, thank you, Rags. Yeah, I just wanted to, before I got into the topic, actually give you some background. I was 14 years active duty, 14 years reserves in the Air Force, and all those 28 years working, specifically working activities related to how does the environment affect space systems and the services those systems provide to the warfighter, as well as some background into how space weather affects terrestrial systems as well that aren't even connected to space. I am the senior technical advisor to the Environmental Monitoring Requirements Branch here at headquarters U.S. Space Force. And we have basically two requirements missions. One has to do with space-based environmental monitoring. We monitor, we are responsible to develop capabilities to provide remote sensing of the natural space-based environmental sensing of both terrestrial and space environmental parameters. That's one mission. The other mission, requirements mission, is to understand the effects of the natural environment on space systems and services, and that's what we term environmental space domain awareness, and develop capabilities or requirements that bring capabilities to bear to provide the kind of intuitive information that our two Army colleagues just brought up. That gets to the bottom line is what's happening to the systems that I care about, both from a near real time or predictive assessment approach. And so that just gives you some background. I am the aerospace support here. I've been at U.S. Space Force, formerly Air Force Space Command, since November '99. And what I'm hearing from my Army colleagues is, and from my NSDC and CSPOC colleagues, consistent with what they've communicated in these webinars, is the need for visualization of information that's consumable, gets down to the bottom line, because we don't have time. We have a difficult, y'all have a difficult time enough accomplishing your mission. You want something to filter through the fog that the environment brings to operations. And so just in general, we actually have a system concept that basically describes what everybody's talking about as far as developing intuitive capabilities that give you the ability to incorporate environmental effects into your planning and execution of your operations. And so my takeaway, and I actually wrote this down as I was listening into the first webinar on visualization, and let me know if this summarizes what everybody's looking for. And that is that we would, our vision would be for a dynamic, relevant, and accurate data fusion and intuitive, answering the so what question, AI-informed visualization of environmental effects on red, blue, and gray space systems and associated terrestrial operations as it applies to operational level and tactical level operations. And we would assume that our allied counterparts would want the same. And so, kind of the bottom line is you need practical information that is both intuitive and consumable and accurate. And it's not just pictures for pretty pictures, but it actually answers the so what question.
Thank you, Kelly. That was good, and thanks for taking up my final get off the stage question. So that's good. Let's go to David Platt. Dave, Dragonoffs.
Hello, everybody. The subject of space weather, as far as like from a commercial perspective, I think where it would probably affect us most would be, radar observations and potentially TT&C links. But for the most part, now speaking as an FA-40, having been a space support element team member for U.S. RSENT, every time we had to brief space weather to the warfighter, it was a cringe moment. And the reason is because most of the warfighters see space weather as voodoo science a lot of times, and I don't know. Hopefully that's changed. I mean, last time when I was an SSE person, I was in 2012 for US RSET. So, and there was a lot of, and so I think I would caution in the briefing of space effects to not oversell the effects on, but also to use it as a planning consideration and a troubleshooting consideration when something does go wrong and you just simply can't figure out what it is. The warfighters that I've briefed on a regular basis, I had to brief space weather every night. My primary tool for this was, Tony, thank you very much, the agency formerly known as JSPOC. We used a lot of the products that they produced to brief that. So, but I think the primary focus on that was pretty much effects of HF and radar HF and radar, and then also GPS effects on GPS operations. So that would be my recommendation if there was a focus for a tool. That's all.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave. And finally, let's go to Flight Lieutenant Mark Platt from the RAF, please.
Thank you, Tony. Good afternoon. So I just wanted to make 2 points briefly. The first, what I think has been covered most throughout this throughout the talk so far. It's talking about the understanding of the domain based on the impacts we're seeing, and that allows us to draw our conclusions as to understand what's going on. And that's basically because we can't look everywhere all of the time. So if, for example, we have atmospheric drag, which is taking place and increasing the drag on a low Earth orbit object, for example, that can have a huge impact on our chain of custody, understanding where something is and where it's going to be, and predict around that, which goes back to what we were talking about in the last webinar, and the predicted impacts on our end users. So, for example, if it was an ISR satellite, where it's going to be, and the impact on our end users going to be affected. The second point that I wanted to talk about, though, is slightly different, and I think we were getting towards it in the last talk just now. We're talking about characterization of space activity and attribution, and Colonel Belmont mentioned this when he was saying that sometimes when you have space weather, the first thing the engineers want to do is start taking apart their equipment because they think there's a problem. And the other potential explanation of there being a problem isn't necessarily space weather, but could it be some kind of nefarious activity? And being able to understand what space weather impacts are having on the space domain will enable you to infer whether in fact it's a natural phenomenon, or is it actually something more serious or adversarial activity which is impacting your equipment. So I think what we're looking for really is a centrally managed database or repository which has the ability to ingest all this information, whether it's impacts, forecasts, and predictions, and so on, and disseminate that in digestible fashion to the end users, but in sufficiently low bandwidth form so that Colonel Cheeseman on the ground there can actually obtain that and make use of it without being bamboozled by all the other wiggly amps which are going on in the background. So I think that's probably enough for me just for now.
Thank you, Mark. So in the last two webinars, a question came up about what command level should these capabilities have access to. So for this space weather tools, I'm going to poll the panel very quickly. What level should have access to these analysis tools, to these tools that we're talking about? So that just to help the providers out. So we'll go back to Flight Lieutenant Mark Platt, please.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, so I think that comes back to the common understanding, but being massively user configurable to eliminate some of the data overload which would otherwise be taking place. So your headquarters, your combined space operations centers, and so on, obviously being your primary focus, but it needs to be to a point where you can expand and disseminate this information to your partners, including civil and commercial partners. So we spoke the other day about having civil integration cells and so on in the UK, and that's absolutely the way that we're wanting to go, and to be able to share that information to commercial operators as well. I think it probably is something which is relevant to the land domain and to the other domains, maritime and air, but the way in which they obtain that data, it might not be in the same fashion as a spinny globe type affair. It might just be more of details with the list of outages or something like that, which might be more relevant, more useful, rather than the full data package, as it were.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, let's go to Dave. What's your thoughts on that, Dave?
Trying to find my mute. I apologize. I'm not sure how the space operations is set up in the UK Armed Forces. In the US Armed Forces, though, my recommendation would be it's set up similar to how the because your FA-40s are your primary support to the warfighter. So I would recommend probably division and corps level where your SSCs lay, and they are your primary representation for space planning. Additionally, also with spacecraft operators, with the Air Force probably potentially there as well. And then, of course, those of us that are in the commercial realm would also like that as well.
Thank you. Next, let's go to Rags and/or Kelly. Over.
Okay, so I was looking at this and I saw that, this comes from officer of the Joint Headquarters. And I think approximately the level that you need to push this down to. We talked in the previous webinar about the fact that what we need at the lowest level is just the effects and not all the information on everything that's going on. So if the Joint Headquarters can push down the information to the lowest level, that there are issues, with space weather that are impacting operations, I think that's probably good from this perspective. Over.
Yeah, and I would agree. And I would just summarize it as operational level and tactical level operations. You got the CSPOC, you got the NSDC. They need an aggregated view with the ability to go down in a detailed fashion. And then you're at the tactical level, for your space operators or space system operators, it would be, on our side, it would be I'm not sure the latest term for the because wings have changed to deltas, but down at the tactical level, the SOPs and the space warning squadrons on the radar side for the tactical level, and again tailored to the systems that they care about. That's it. Over.
Thanks, Kelly. Let's see, Colonel Cheeseman, what are your thoughts, sir?
Yes, very much. Just to reiterate what everyone else is saying, really a scalable system up at the Joint Force Headquarters, some sort of visualization to allow the commander to perhaps maneuver in accordance with whatever disruption you've got there. And frankly, down in the ditch, all you just need to be told is, hey, your comms are going to be pretty poor and your GPS is playing up.
Thank you, sir. Colonel Belmont, your thoughts?
Yeah, I pretty much have to agree with what everybody's already said, which is you got to get the information to division, and then it's up to division to pass that down to the operators to make sure everybody is aware of when, and what frequencies are going to get hit and for how long. And if you can, specify the equipment. But I think division level is your resting spot for the most important information.
Thank you. So we have one question in so far, and before I go around for everyone to just summarize kind of the top 3 thoughts they have on the tool we will need. But the question is, what is the scope of the assets that can be utilized towards the development of such a platform? And are all these challenges feeding into an integral solution on a common standard? So a lot of that, I think, goes to the data standards, the input that we're having before. But let's go around, and if anyone has a thought on that, answer that question from Mr. Page. Over. All right, I will pick on someone.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. And you can pull this up. If you click on Q&A at the bottom of your screen, you can actually pull up the narrative and the question. The question was, what is the scope of the assets that can be utilized towards the development of such a platform? And are all these challenges feeding into an integral solution on a common standard? Who would like to take a shot at that one?
I think what we need to talk about is what's the current state, and then what is the envisioned state of the future, where do we need to get to, and I think that's what the question is getting at. The need to have an integrated UDL type data access, unified data library type of access at multiple classification levels. But currently it's very ad hoc. But in general, it consists of, you got to sense the environment, and then you got to put that information into a picture of the global environment, because you can't sense everything all the time everywhere, and so you model it, and so that is needed, and then you have applications that take that information, merge environmental parameters with how it physically affects systems, and then you present that in a matter that answers the so what question in visual form. But that is the integrated system that is needed to address requirements. And obviously a key player in all of this is the end user, both from an operational level and a tactical level. The user of technological systems to get the mission done.
Thank you, Kelly. Does anyone else have anything to offer for this question?
You know, I would just offer up that between 2nd Weather Squadron and NOAA, all the data are there. It's just a question of getting your hands on it, properly translating it into English for the users in the field, so that they understand what's about to happen and for how long. This is one thing where the Air Force really has a grip on it, and it's any problems we have inside the Army are purely self-inflicted, because we get all the answers from the Air Force. It's just a question of translating it. Over.
Thanks, Miller. Anything else before I go around for a final poll? Okay, thank you. So I want to go around again, like I said, for a final poll. And what I would like to help our developers out, our providers out, is a summary of your top 3, I would say, needs regarding this challenge. So if you could just summarize what you would envision as your need specific to your particular unit. So well, I think that's clear enough. So let's start off with Colonel Cheeseman, please.
Thank you, Tony. I think it's just reiterating points I've already had. The top 3 points for me were just one tool. I don't want to have to reach back to different tools to tell me different things. And it needs to be intuitive as well. Less so for the guy on the ground that's probably just going to get a little text message. But the guys back in the headquarters, they don't want to go on another course to learn how to use this bit of kit. Second point, just to reiterate what Mark said, is if it's a system that's actually cyber and electromagnetic aware. So actually, is this really, to have the SA to go, actually, is this space or is this someone else spoofing us? And the final thing, I mean, if possible, to actually have the visualization, and I'm not talking just about geography here, but to allow the commander back at headquarters the ability to maneuver within the actual restrictions that the space weather's providing. We're not just going to sit there and wait the storm to die. We need to be able to have the tools to allow us to maneuver throughout this interference. That's it.
Thank you, sir. I didn't mean to put you on the spot right away, but I had to pick somebody. Let's go to Flight Lieutenant Mark Platt. What do you think your top 3 are, sir?
Thank you, Tony. So I think I'm going to go back to this idea of a centrally managed database, probably something which is held ideally at a coalition level, and makes use of the inputs from all over, to include also inputs from coalition partners. So, for instance, we have the Met Office Space Weather Operations Center, which provides us with space weather warning. So add that in as well. And it's at that level where the analysis, the potential impacts are conducted and are held. And that leads on to my second point, in that from that level, it's the configurable low latency, low bandwidth output, which goes to our users, our end users, so whether it be a ship or an army unit, which is able to configure the data which they need, make it suitable for their purposes, so that, as Colonel Cheeseman said there, they don't have to go for an extended training course to understand it. It clearly explains what they're after, and what they need to know in order to conduct their operations. And I think the third point I'll just talk here very briefly about is probably trying to understand a little bit the difference as to perhaps why the UK would be more comfortable with a slightly lower level of delegation, or at least not delegation, but of dissemination of this information. And it probably comes down to the number of qualified space instructors that we have. So we're currently somewhere in the area of about 20, I think it is, maybe 30 qualified space instructors who would have the detailed knowledge of the impacts of space weather on their operations, and to be able to impart that, which isn't an awful lot to go around, compared to quite a few more in the US military who might be able to explain that to divisional headquarters and so on more easily. So from a UK perspective, we would probably need this to be disseminated to a slightly lower level. But I think I fully understand the slight difference between UK US just based on that qualification level.
Okay, Mark, for me, you were breaking up a little bit, so I think you're finished. Thank you. Good input. Before I continue on, I do want to encourage the attendees to write in questions because you have the panel here that can answer them. Next, let's go to Colonel Belmont. Your top three, sir.
My top three is $500,000, a contract vehicle, and a list of requirements that I can generate in about 5 minutes, and that'll solve our problems.
Miller, as usual, you are succinct and correct. Next, let's go to Dave, Dragonops.
All right, so one of the benefits of going, not at the beginning is you get, basically you do a lot of foot stomping of what other folks have said. I think Mr. Kelly-Hand talked about the modeling effects and the so what associated with those. And then, so I would say one of the things that I've noticed most often as a SSC person or as a space support to the warfighter is a lot of times the products are not as localized as they need to be. So localized effects on the area in question and in mitigation recommendations. And one thing that I haven't heard yet is a quick alert type mechanism when an event occurs. So an event occurred, CME or whatever, or just awareness of solar max, but more specifically, what I'm talking about is like a CME event alert notifications. So that's
Thanks,
it.
Dave.
Over.
Thank you. And it's interesting that you say that, Dave, because I was texting on my phone here that the solution space could be something like a weather channel app that you have on your phone that'll give you alerts or things like that. So that's kind of a funny little anecdote there, but it's also something that I know General Shaw really, really looks for in a lot of areas, not just space weather, is something that he can be alerted with or alerted by in a simple platform, whether it's a cell phone or whether it's a tablet or whatever. So that's not a point that should be missed. Thank you, Dave. That was very good. Okay, finally, let's go to Rags and Kelly. The top three things that you think would really work with this challenge. Over.
Okay, so I wrote down 3 words, and the first word is visionable. We have to be able to find a way to present this in a very visual fashion, because that's the way people generally think, and that's the way they can take their actions the fastest. It also has to be intuitive. You can't have somebody having to sit down there and do analysis of the information that we're providing them. It has to be quickly available and put into action by the warfighter. And the last word is that, actionable. And that is, if this happens, what are you going to do about it? Can you give me some background on what it is? And even better than that, maybe some artificial intelligence work or something like that to say, okay, what is a potential course of action that we could use going forward? And that would relieve the commander in the field of having to try and think all of this through while he's under fire. Over.
Thanks, Rags. Kelly, anything to add?
Yeah, just I'm trying to think of the top three things, and one thing that stood out to me was actually spoken about earlier, and that is, and I think Colonel Belmont brought it up, and that is that there's a lot of data that's out there that's available that's probably not being effectively used, and so. I think that has to do with training and education. So, for example, what was brought up earlier is having event notifications. There are the Second Weather Squadron does put out specific event notifications, and in that text message, they actually do explain how that particular event can impact systems, terrestrial and space systems. And so, that would be one thing. We need to better use the data that we already have available. The second thing would be there are gaps in key information that are key space weather parameters that need to be filled, and it can be filled with a combination of accurate sensors and models that turn that sensor data into a picture of what's happening in the environment, and then providing an accurate. You're limited in your accuracy for weather forecasts. Space weather is no different, but there are some predictive. Quality can be improved in the area of prediction if you work on improving those models. And then finally, this is where the rubber meets the road, and I think I would start this whole conversation of what is it we need to understand concerning the environment, and that is the end application. And we need to get system specific. And I mean, physics is physics, and engineering is engineering. And what we need to understand clearly is how does the natural environment, and I throw in the terrestrial environment as well, when it comes to effects, for example, on space systems and services, the terrestrial environment is a factor as well. And so, focusing on bottom line, what is it we need to know about the environment that affects the end customer? It needs to drive everything. And so that's all I wanted to say.
All right, thanks, Kelly. So I see, before we finish up today, I see Lieutenant Colonel Tom Day on there from Headquarters U.S. Space Force. Tom, do you have anything that you just want to throw in real quick before we check out?
Sure. Thanks, Tony. I don't have much in the area of the operational perspective that the colonels have provided, but I did want to offer that the challenge does mention a planning aspect, and so I would hope that I would see some of the challenges of this as for the planners as forecasting the probability of mission success when you integrate in the possible effects of space weather. I also would expect a challenge in the area of integrating. So we're talking about a product for people in the field to look at space weather, but what about integrating the effects of space weather into other models, other tools, and other multi-domain operations, other tools that they're going to have for their multi-domain ops to work their problems. So I would just consider that aspect of the challenge as you're working on it.
Thank you, Tom. So I'm going to get ready to conclude here, and I'm going to provide a summary. But first, I want to thank the panel members. I know I learned a lot during these discussions, so I appreciate all of your perspectives and your input. And I hope that really helps out the folks that will be providing proposals for this challenge. I wanted to, in summary, I wanted to at least talk about the importance of space weather because it's very important as we've come to see in this conversation. So I think we've achieved that. I wanted to discuss it and get the perspectives from the panel members. I think we've achieved that. And finally, what I wanted to do, and the reason I asked that three summary or three top three points, is really to help the providers understand from our perspectives what we're really looking for. So I hope we've done that. So that was my intent. I think we've achieved a lot of that. So I'll turn it over to Brandon and Jake now for next steps. And again, thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you, Tony. Yeah, as far as questions, we didn't really get many questions. I think of the one that was posed during the event, it was answered through the discussion. So again, if you have any last minute questions, feel free to type it into the Q&A. But if not, you can always pose questions through our email on the website. There's a generic email for the Allied Defense Accelerator. We've already been fielding some questions through there that startups might have. So again, just to give you a quick overview, this is the last webinar for this week. Next week on Tuesday, we start up with the next one. So we will be covering challenges 4 and 5 on Tuesday, and then challenge 6 on Thursday. And then the week after that, we're going to be moving into more not challenge related webinars, but focusing more on how to work within the US and the UK and working with their respective defense agencies. So Ministry of Defense in the UK and the Department of Defense in the US. So those 2 webinars will take place on August 10th and 12th. Again, really quick thing to remember, if you plan to submit a proposal, you must register prior to August 19th as one of the steps for qualifying for submitting a proposal and participating. And then of course the proposal submission being September 2nd. So again, you can go to the website and find out more information there as well. With that, I will pass it to Jake if he has any closing remarks, and we should be good.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Yeah, I'm having video problems at the moment. But just want to echo the next steps here. We've got additional webinars introducing additional challenge areas. A lot of them are overlapping and enable each other, so they're important. And you have more opportunities to hear, again, from people close to the problems on what they're experiencing and what they need, what's important to them. These other panels on, working with the UK, Ministry of Defense or the DoD in the US, we understand that there are solutions in the market, that there are problems among our end users, and that's not always, that's not enough. There is a difficult path sometimes to connect the two, and we want to, through this program, maximize those transition successes. So we're bringing in resources to help with the business viability, with the transition success, and understanding, again, who your customer is within defense, but how do I work with them? What do I need to know and think about? This can be difficult enough sometimes if you are a US or UK rising space company in those respective countries. But if you are anywhere else around the world, it becomes even more difficult. So we are trying to position ourselves to be a customer. And I would say that today that it's going to be easier to work with us than it has ever been before. So tune into those panels and hear from a lot of experts, mentors about resources and support in working within both of those markets as well with defense customers. Again, the website has additional program information about registration, where to submit proposals, and these webinars, again, brief introductions. Companies that are invited to pitch at pitch day will have the opportunity to attend design sprints and work more directly with us, have access to additional resources, because our goal is to solve these challenges for these missions and to access those emerging commercial space capabilities. So we want to see the companies here be successful, and we are positioning and shifting ourselves to help you do that. So thank you for joining in today. Thank you for your ideas, your innovations. Thank you for the panel members. Please, follow and continue to tune in for the program as we move forward.
Great.
Brandon?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jake. So with that, we will conclude this webinar. We thank you all for participating, and we look forward to seeing you on the next challenge webinars and receiving proposals from your companies. So with that, have a great day, afternoon, evening, and we will see you then. Bye.